Well, in Birmingham is Fahad Ansari, a human rights lawyer and Babar Ahmad's brother-in-law. From Washington, we're joined by David Rivkin, a lawyer who worked in the Justice Department and as an associate of White House counsel in the Reagan and Bush senior administrations. And here in London, the Conservative MP Patrick Mercer, the former chairman of the Commons Counter-Terrorism Subcommittee. Fahad Ansari, if I can come to you first, what's your reaction to tonight's decision?
We are obviously quite disappointed with Europe's decision, but we're not very surprised. It's really irrelevant for us because this matter should never have even reached Strasbourg. If the British police had done their job 9 years ago and submitted the material seized from Babar's home to the domestic prosecution authorities rather than secretly sending it to their US counterparts, Babar would have been prosecuted in this country and in either case, even if convicted, would have been released by now.
So let's just separate this out. Nothing to Abu Hamza. It's purely Babar Ahmad's case that you are pursuing.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, my involvement with these cases has been with Babar Ahmad's case as, obviously, as you mentioned, a family member and as a campaign member from the last 7 to 8 years. This issue, he's a British citizen. He is someone who has worked and lived in this country his entire life. And he's someone who's accused of a crime committed in this country. The crime was not committed in America. It was not committed in Russia, in Pakistan. He should face trial in this country. We have never actually said that Babar should escape trial. We have always called for him to face those serious questions in a British court of law.
Thank you. Well, that is the judicial process running its long course, Patrick Mercer. And you accept that it's had to take this length of time?
I'm very disappointed, Kirsty, that it's had to take this length of time for the simple reason that these men are innocent until proved guilty. Very clear. We mustn't ever get away from that. What I do think is quite wrong is that individuals should have had to spend this amount of time not just being deeply concerned about their future, not knowing whether they are found guilty or innocent, but also, of course, absorbing British taxpayers' money. I wish it hadn't taken this long. I'm glad now that we seem to be approaching a resolution.
And do you make any qualitative difference between alleged crimes committed here and abroad, as Fahad Ansari is saying?
I think that individuals should be tried in the country where the crime is committed.
David Rivkin, what is your view of tonight's decision?
Well, it's high time. My view actually is the reason it's taken so many years is because these individuals, and more precisely our lawyers, have advanced all sorts of frivolous arguments, first for the British criminal justice system, then for the European justice system. And I frankly don't understand the argument that they should have been tried only in the United Kingdom. Under our extradition treaty with Great Britain and under international law in general, if you commit a crime that takes place, and it happens quite a bit in the 21st century, using electronic means, using websites, using other communications in more than one country, there's a variety of choices that prosecutors have. I don't know of any principle of humanitarian law which says that you only have to be tried in Britain or France or Germany. And in any case, the notion that they would be tortured in the United States is preposterous. These arguments are obviously frivolous, and the reason it took so long to resolve is because their lawyers pressed all the buttons. So I frankly don't feel any sympathy for them.
Well, the lawyer,
as far as that goes.
The lawyers pressed all the buttons that were there for them to press. What about the argument?
Well, why should they complain about it? About how long it's taken? It's kind of a silly argument, don't you think?
Fahad Ansari, can you respond to that?
I think for a representative of government of the United States to argue that the United States doesn't torture is quite preposterous in itself in light of recent events. As regards to this specific case, we have due process. The problem was there was an abuse of that due process 9 years ago when the evidence was not given to the DPP. In terms of prosecuting Babar Ahmad and Talhasan in this country, in fact, the offence has taken place in the United Kingdom, as Patrick Mercer has stated. They are British citizens, lived in here. They have not stepped foot in the United States. So why on earth should they be extradited to the United States? The websites in question were accused of running campaigns in Chechnya. So if that was the case, why haven't Russia requested the extradition? And in Afghanistan, again, there's a British interest. The reality is, Kirsty, is that 150,000 people signed a petition for Babar to be tried in this country. There is enormous public interest. Keir Starmer, the DPP, now has that evidence. For the first time in 8 years, the DPP has been presented with the evidence, and he is trustworthy and honest and integrity enough to actually make a proper decision on this.
David Rivkin, the question that Babar Ahmad and other supporters ask is whether or not these men would get a fair trial in America.
I would say, of course, they'll get a fair trial. I don't know what evidence of torture this gentleman is talking about, but I can tell you, even if you don't like military justice system in Guantanamo, they're going to be tried in the civilian justice system. That is the most due process laden system in the world. If I were a guilty person, I would rather be tried in the United States than anywhere else in the world. He'll get the fair trial, and if he is convicted, he will be serving his time in humane conditions without any torture. So this is all quite preposterous. But one more thing, again, I don't understand the notion that had he been prosecuted in the UK, he would somehow not have been eligible to extradition to the United States. Obviously, the American government made a prima facie showing to the British criminal justice system that they've committed a crime over which the United States has jurisdiction.
You display your ignorance of the treaty. Under the treaty, the United States government does not have to show a prima facie case, and that is the exact problem with this treaty, which campaigners have been campaigning against for 8 years.
Let me bring Patrick Mercer in. This is strained relations, isn't it?
Of course it is. The one thing that I think is very clear is I believe that they will get a proper trial in America. I'm absolutely convinced of that. But above and beyond everything else, no matter what the lawyers say, if I talk to my constituents, 99 out of 100, and I've tried to do this, say, get these men out of this country, get them off our tax roll, and get them back to the countries where they will receive a proper trial.
Is this a victory for the European courts for this way of doing things?
I don't think it's a victory at all. I think this has taken far too long for us to come to this particular point. And what I would say is, I hope that in the future that our government looks towards its memoranda of understanding that it has negotiated with the various countries that are involved and invokes those properly and invokes them early.
But people have the recourse of the European court. That is their right.
Of course they do. The fact remains that I think the majority of the people inside this country deeply resent the amount of time that these individuals have stayed here and consumed their taxes. I think that now, at last, we're getting the right result.
I'll second that.
Fahad Ansari, what is your next step?
Our next step is that we would request the Home Secretary to undertake not to extradite Babar and Talha specifically until the Director of Public Prosecutions has made a decision on whether there's a case to answer for them being prosecuted in the UK. For the first time, he has the evidence which was kept hidden from the Crown prosecution for 8 years, and he's a man of integrity, and I trust he will make the same decision that 150,000 people, more people than are in Theresa May's constituency, have asked for.
Thank you all very much indeed.